A toddler's sock lay limp in the gutter, soaked through and nearly invisible against the grey Detroit slush. Next to it, under a cracked plastic bus shelter, Mariah pressed her coat tighter around her son's tiny body. Her sneakers were soaked, the back of her legs ached from standing all night, and her breath fogged the scratched plexiglass in front of her, disappearing into the cold like it had somewhere better to be. Cars hissed by. Some slowed just enough to gawk. Most didn't even see her. Suits with coffee cups emerged from shiny sedans, walking fast toward the downtown offices. Their shoes made a hard sound on wet pavement. Mariah's feet made no sound at all. Her baby stirred. She rubbed his back gently, her fingers stiff with cold. "You're okay, little bear. Just a little longer." She'd said that yesterday too, and the day before. There had been no shelter beds left by the time she got to the intake line. Some volunteer in a puffy vest had offered her a flyer about a transitional housing program that didn't take infants. She still had it folded in her back pocket like a cruel joke. A city bus roared past, trailing steam. The baby whimpered, startled by the sound. Mariah adjusted her grip, trying to shield his ears. Her wrist brushed his cheek, clammy. Not just from the cold. The formula was gone. Last bottle emptied yesterday at noon. That's when it happened. A car stopped. Not the city bus. Not a cop car. A dark sedan. Quiet, nondescript, probably 5 years old. It pulled to the curb, idling there. The windows stayed up. At first, Mariah looked away, certain someone was just checking their phone. But then the driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Tan trench coat, dark slacks. Not flashy. He didn't hurry, didn't shout, didn't wave a camera or offer a handout. He just stood a few feet from her under the bus shelter's drip line, letting the rain hit his shoulders. Mariah's grip tightened around her child. "Mom, are you all right?" His voice was low, calmer than the storm around them. She nodded reflexively, then hesitated. What did all right even mean anymore? "I don't want any trouble," she said quietly. "I didn't think you did." There was something strange about the man. Not strange bad, strange familiar. Like a face you might have seen in an old brochure or on a community board but couldn't place. He had the kind of eyes that didn't skim. They saw. "Is your son cold?" Mariah shifted her weight. The baby let out a faint cough. She hesitated, then said, "We're just waiting for the next bus." The lie landed between them, soft and heavy. The bus schedule taped behind her was so old the ink had run. The man looked at it, then back at her. "I'm Elijah. My car's warm. I'm heading toward Jefferson. There's a diner halfway. You both look like you could use something hot." Mariah didn't speak. "I won't touch you. I won't ask questions you don't want to answer. Just a seat and a meal. That's all." Still she didn't move, but her son squirmed again, fussing against the front of her coat. She felt his cheek, still clammy. Hunger or fever, she couldn't tell any more. Elijah took a small step back. "You can follow me to the car on your own. Or not at all. It's your choice." That's when something shifted. Not in her bones, but in the way her hands trembled. They weren't trembling from fear. Mariah stepped forward. She didn't look at him. She just walked, cradling her son through the cold mist toward the sedan. The door opened with a soft, mechanical click. Inside, the heat was already running. She paused, not out of doubt, but disbelief. "I'll sit in the back," she said. "That's fine," Elijah replied. She slid in. The seat was warm, not fancy, but clean. The kind of warmth you forget exists when the world teaches you to expect only plastic chairs and metal benches. Elijah circled the car and got in front. The driver looked at her in the mirror. Didn't say a word. The engine hummed, and they pulled away from the curb. She didn't cry. Not yet. The rain tapped lightly on the windows. Her son's breathing settled against her shoulder. In the center console, a black notebook sat half open. The name stamped in gold on the cover had been scratched off. Just faint ghost letters now. K. Or maybe nothing at all. Mariah stared at it. The car turned left at the corner with the faded mural, and the ghost of a name followed them down the street. The wipers scraped slow arcs across the windshield, smearing raindrops into long horizontal streaks. Inside the car, warmth wrapped around Mariah like something borrowed, like a memory that didn't belong to her anymore. Elijah didn't look back. He kept his eyes forward, one hand resting loosely on the steering wheel, even though he wasn't the one driving. The driver, a middle-aged man with smooth hands and a quiet disposition, didn't speak. The kind who could pass as family or staff, depending on the room. Mariah pulled her coat tighter over the baby. The boy had drifted into a shallow sleep, his lips slightly parted. She adjusted her grip, careful not to wake him. The rhythm of the engine, the heat vents the occasional turn signal. They created a low soundtrack that soothed her more than she expected. "I didn't catch your name," Elijah said, voice low. Mariah hesitated. She hadn't decided if it was safe to answer. "Mariah," he nodded, still not turning around. "That's a strong name." She gave a small nod, unsure what that meant. They pulled onto a side street lined with auto shops and old storefronts, faded signs, a half-lit barber pole, the kind of places people forgot to repaint. Eventually they slowed in front of a small diner, tucked between a dry cleaner and a payday loan office. No sign above the door, just a flickering neon open sign taped to the glass. Elijah stepped out first. He motioned gently for her to follow but didn't touch the door. She managed to shift the baby to one arm and open it herself. The diner smelled like bacon coffee and tired furniture. Vinyl booths peeling menus, a radio playing Motown classics beneath the hum of a dusty ceiling fan. The hostess, a woman in her 50s with bright pink nail polish and thick mascara, looked up and gave Elijah a small smile of recognition. "Back again. Just breakfast, Marcia. Booth by the window if it's open." Marcia nodded, then gave Mariah a curious glance, one that lingered a moment too long. But she said nothing and led them to a table near the far wall. Elijah slid in first, and Mariah hesitated, before sitting opposite baby, still bundled in her arms. Marcia returned with 2 mugs and a tiny smile. "Coffee, please," Elijah replied. Mariah shook her head. Marcia poured quietly, then set down 2 menus. Elijah didn't touch his. He looked at Mariah. "Order anything, or nothing. No pressure." She glanced at the menu but couldn't focus on the words. She didn't want to admit she hadn't eaten anything solid in over a day. Just the crackers she'd found at the bottom of her diaper bag. "Something soft," she murmured. "For him, too." Elijah waved Marcia over and ordered oatmeal toast, scrambled eggs, and a small fruit cup. Mariah didn't protest. She'd forgotten how to. They sat in silence until the food arrived. The baby woke and began to fuss. Mariah, gently but quickly, scooped bits of banana from the fruit cup onto a napkin and fed him in small pinches. She tried not to cry as he devoured each one. Elijah finally spoke again. "You've been out there long." Mariah exhaled. She hadn't wanted to tell the story, but the warmth in her limbs and the weight of food in front of her made resistance feel almost dishonest. "Couple months now. Since January." Elijah nodded slowly. "What happened?" Mariah shifted in her seat. "I met someone, Caleb. We were in a community college program. He worked HVAC. I was in early education. Thought he was solid. He said all the right things. And then he disappeared. She looked down at the baby. Said he had to drive out of state to visit his sister. Never came back. No note, no call. Phone just dead. Elijah's fingers curled slightly around his coffee mug. His eyes never left her. I didn't have much. No family left. My mum passed in 2020, foster homes before that. I thought I was smart, but she stopped. I kept waiting for him to come back, thinking I must have missed a text or a call. But weeks passed. Rent ran out. I sold everything worth anything. We started walking. Silence fell again. Mariah picked at the crust of toast, not for herself, just absent-mindedly. "I don't want charity," she said softly. I didn't offer any. She looked up. His expression was unreadable but not cold. "I run a logistics company," Elijah said. "Supply chain, mostly. Trucks, warehouses, distribution. But I've been stepping back lately." He folded a napkin into thirds. "I don't usually stop for strangers. That's not a confession. Just a fact." Mariah nodded. Her son reached for her plate, and she distracted him with the last of the banana. Elijah reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small white card. Plain. No logo. Just a name and a number in dark print E. Kerr. "If you ever need anything, more food, a room, a chance, call this. I can't promise a miracle, but I won't ignore the call." Mariah stared at the card. It looked expensive, but unbranded, like it had been cut from some forgotten stationery line. She took it hesitantly and tucked it into the baby's inside coat pocket. No purse, no bag. "I have a meeting across town," Elijah said, standing, "but I'll check that number later today. If you call, I'll answer." Mariah opened her mouth to thank him, but the words didn't come. Just a nod. Elijah nodded back and, without fanfare, walked out into the rain. She looked at the card again through the fabric of the baby's coat. Still there. She would find a phone. Just one call. That's all she needed. Outside, the rain continued to fall, and the diner door closed behind him with a soft chime. The rain slowed by the time Mariah stepped outside. Grey puddles mirrored the diner's red neon open sign, fractured and flickering. She pulled the baby's hood tighter, patting his back as he whined softly against her chest. The oatmeal in her stomach gave her just enough strength to start walking again. She didn't know where she was going, just that she had to find a working phone. The white card Elijah had given her was still tucked into the baby's coat pocket. She checked twice during the walk, fingers grazing the edge of it like a safety pin. She thought about the way he'd spoken. No urgency, no pity, just quiet attention. She wasn't used to that. A few blocks away, she found a library branch. The building was squat and brick with a faded blue mural peeling off the side. She ducked into the lobby and felt the warmth hit her face like an old song. Inside, the air smelled of paper and wet umbrellas. A security guard nodded but didn't stop her. In the back corner near the children's books, there was a small desk labeled Youth Services. No nameplate sat on the counter, just a plastic holder with a smudged paper insert that had been turned backward. The woman behind the desk was helping a toddler with crayons. Mariah waited, rocking gently. "Hi," she said when the woman looked up. I just need to borrow a phone for one quick call, just to reach someone." "It's important." The woman hesitated, then nodded toward the public service desk. "They can unlock one of the landlines for you. 15 minutes max." Mariah thanked her and hurried over. A staffer with a Detroit Lions lanyard walked her through the login screen. She dialed the number on Elijah's card, slowly double-checking each digit. It rang. Once. Twice. Then voicemail. "You've reached E. Kerr. Leave a message and I'll get back to you." There was a long beep. She froze. This is Mariah. We met this morning, at the diner on 4th. I'm trying to reach you. I don't have a phone, but I'm going back there now. I'll wait. Please. She hung up. A long breath escaped her chest. She handed the phone back, thanked the staffer, and left. Back at the diner, the light had shifted. The lunch crowd was trickling in. She stood outside her back against the brick wall, baby sleeping in her arms. She couldn't afford to order anything else, and the manager had already shot her a look that said 1 visit per day was enough generosity. So she waited outside. Rain dripped from the diner awning. Time passed. Every few minutes she patted her son's jacket pocket to check the card. Still there. Across town, Elijah sat in a high-rise conference room with unpainted walls and 3 missing ceiling tiles. The merger team had taken over the space weeks ago. No branding, no plaque, no hint of which company held the lease now. Just a glass door with a strip of old duct tape where someone had ripped a nameplate off. Elijah glanced at his phone under the table. No missed calls, no message. He opened his voicemail and replayed his own outgoing message just in case. The call never came. The meeting continued, filled with acronyms and projections, but his mind wandered. His brother Malcolm would be landing later that night. He made a mental note to check if the spare room had clean linens. Back at the diner, Mariah waited. The sun moved behind thicker clouds and the wind picked up. Her son woke with a soft cry. She reached into his coat for the pacifier, then froze. The pocket was empty. No card. Her fingers trembled as she searched again. She pulled the coat open, checked inside the seams, shook the tiny blanket tucked under his chin. Nothing. Just lint and bottle caps. The card had slipped out. Panic rose in her chest like smoke. She scanned the sidewalk, the street, the cracks in the concrete. She crouched, shifting her son against her hip, frantically brushing at the puddles with her free hand. A couple stepped around her, muttering. Someone laughed. She felt the familiar weight of shame. Heavy, cold. Inside the diner, the manager glanced out and frowned. She walked out the door. You okay? Mariah looked up, dirt on her palm. I lost something. Can't have people crawling around out here, hun. You all right? Mariah stood up, slowly wiped her hand on her jeans, nodded. Yeah, sorry, just clumsy. She left the sidewalk, walking quickly toward the alley beside the dry cleaner. There, under the eaves, she pressed her back to the wall and breathed. Her son whimpered again. She rocked him back and forth. I lost it. I lost it, she whispered. The card had been her one way out, her chance, and now it was gone, possibly trampled, possibly swept down the storm drain, like everything else she'd tried to hold on to. Elijah finished his meeting, walked out to his car and stared at the empty screen on his phone. Nothing. Doubt slipped in like fog. Had she tossed the card, he told the driver to swing past the diner. They arrived 10 minutes after Mariah left. Elijah got out and walked inside. Marcia looked up from behind the register. She came back, he asked. Girl with the baby? Yeah. She was out front for a while. Then she left. Did she say anything? Marcia shook her head. Elijah stepped outside and scanned the sidewalk. He walked the length of the curb, eyes low. At the corner just past the trash bin, he saw something half-folded in the gutter. He reached down and picked it up, a wet, blurred rectangle of cardstock. The letters were gone, just a blank square with soft corners. He held it between his fingers for a moment, then let it drop back into the bin. Mariah walked for nearly an hour, with no direction, circling blocks she barely recognized, praying. The wind hadn't carried the card too far. The baby had grown heavier against her chest, his cheeks blotchy with cold. Her arms ached. Her knees trembled with every curb she stepped over. She stopped near an intersection where a mural of Harriet Tubman peeled off the brick in long strips, her painted eyes faded by sun and soot. Mariah sank to the ground beside a rusted bike rack, pulled the baby into her lap, and looked around the pavement. A gum wrapper? A damp napkin? A flattened cigarette box? Not the card. She whispered under her breath. I should have put it in my shoe, or my bra, or my... The baby stirred. She quieted herself. Overhead, a delivery truck rumbled by, blasting music through a cracked window. Bass shook the puddles beside her. She thought of Elijah's eyes, how still they were. Not sharp, not soft, just still. Listening eyes. Would he think she threw it away, that she didn't care, that she was one of those women, the kind who took kindness and made it someone else's mistake? No. She couldn't let that be her story. She stood up, shifted her son's weight, and walked back toward the diner. When she arrived, the sidewalk was clear. No sedan, no Elijah. She stepped inside. The heat hit her like a memory she didn't want to trust. Marcia looked up and frowned. Hey there, you all right? I dropped something earlier. The card Mariah's throat caught. Yes. You saw it. Marcia nodded toward the trash bin outside. Your guy came back, found it in the gutter. Looked like it had been through hell. Did he leave anything? Marcia shook her head. Just walked out. Didn't say a word. Mariah stepped back, pressing her hand to the doorframe. She'd missed him. By minutes. Or less. She stepped outside again and leaned against the diner wall. Eyes shut the rain starting to fall fresh from the slate-colored sky. Her baby nuzzled her chest. She looked down at his face. We were so close, she whispered. So close. In a modest condo on the east side, Elijah stood in his kitchen, rinsing his hands under warm water. The faucet had started to squeak again, another thing to fix. The smell of takeout noodles lingered in the air, untouched on the table behind him. His phone sat face up on the counter. Still silent. His mind returned to the diner, to the card, to the way Mariah had looked at him. Not with desperation, but with dignity, worn thin from weather and time. He'd left his name, his number, and still the silence. Maybe he'd misjudged her. Maybe she never meant to call. Or maybe he was projecting something old onto someone new, an apology he owed elsewhere, handed to a stranger like a misplaced kindness. He turned off the faucet and dried his hands. The apartment was too quiet. Across the room, the guest room door stood ajar. A suitcase sat half-packed on the bed. His brother Malcolm was returning from his long post abroad, 17 years gone, and now suddenly back from consulting in Johannesburg or maybe Singapore. He couldn't keep up anymore. The kettle began to hiss. Elijah turned it off and poured hot water into a chipped mug, dropping in a tea bag without looking at the label. He carried the mug to the window and looked out. The city shimmered with wet lights. Headlights rolled down slick roads like slow-moving stars. He thought about the diner again. He should have waited. But waited how long? Mariah, meanwhile, wandered until the weight in her arms became too much. Her legs folded beneath her on a city bench, tucked between two overflowing trash bins. She took off one shoe and checked inside. No card, of course. It was a useless hope, but hope had become her only fuel. A man in a vest with a fast food logo walked by, chewing a sandwich, and glanced at her. He didn't slow down. No one did. She sat like that for a long time, until the clouds cleared slightly and a low beam of pink lit the edges of the skyline. That's when she decided. We're going back. Same place. Same spot. She stood stiff-legged and began retracing every block between the diner and that shelter on Gratiot. She passed storefronts that had been vacant so long. Their display mannequins wore yellowed sale tags. One building had a broken doorbell. Its nameplate beside the buzzer was missing, just 2 empty holes where the screws had once been. She knocked anyway. No answer. She kept walking. Behind her, a man stood beneath a flickering street lamp, smoking in silence, watching her disappear down the block with her child. Hours later, Elijah's driver knocked gently on his office door. "Sir, you said to let you know if I saw her again." Elijah straightened. "You saw her?" "Yes, sir. Same girl. Near the water tower on 6th. Just now." Elijah grabbed his jacket. "Bring her, if she wants to come." The driver nodded and stepped out. Mariah had stopped near a bench, rocking the baby back to sleep. The street lamp above her buzzed. She barely noticed the sedan roll up. The driver stepped out. "Miss." She flinched. "I'm with Mr. Kerr. He asked me to find you." Her mouth opened, then closed. A soundless thank you hung in the air. I lost the card. I swear He knows." Mariah stared at him. "Do you still want to see him?" She nodded. And for the first time in weeks, someone opened a door just for her and waited. The car ride was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Mariah sat in the back, her baby asleep in her arms, the blanket tucked carefully under his chin. The driver didn't speak, except to ask if the heat was okay. She nodded. He adjusted it slightly. Outside, the streets of Detroit blurred into amber smears of streetlight and rain-streaked concrete. They passed long blocks of shuttered factories and narrow rows of homes with sagging porches and satellite dishes pointed toward something they would never reach. Mariah looked out the window and tried not to cry. When they turned onto a private drive, she sat up. The gates had no sign, just black bars and rust at the hinges. Beyond them, a curved path opened onto a property that didn't look like wealth. It looked like memory. Brick colonial ivy climbing one corner porch lights warm and golden. Not opulent. Just quiet. Safe. The car stopped. The driver came around, opened the door, and nodded gently. Mariah stepped out with her son. Her shoes left wet prints on the stone steps. She hesitated at the door. An old wood frame, dark and solid with a brass plate beneath the knocker that had no name engraved on it. Just a thin outline where a name once had been now removed. Before she could knock, the door opened. Elijah stood there, tie gone, sleeves rolled, face unreadable. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "I wasn't sure I'd be found," she replied. He stepped aside and let her in. The entryway smelled of cedar and something clean, like baking soda and laundry. To her left, a den with soft brown couches and a piano with closed keys. To her right, a narrow hallway where framed pictures had been taken down. Only the clean outlines remained on the painted wall. It was a house filled with presence and absence both. He motioned toward the kitchen. "I made tea. Or there's juice. Whatever you need." She followed him in. The baby stirred again, eyes half open. Elijah set a ceramic mug in front of her and pushed over a plate of crackers and cheese. The lights hummed softly overhead. "I lost the card," she said quickly. "I swear I didn't throw it away." "I know. I meant to call. I borrowed a phone. Left a message. I didn't get it. I waited at the diner. Then I came back and they said you'd already been, and left, and I—" Elijah raised a hand palm open. "You don't have to explain it all." Mariah stopped. Her chest rose and fell in quick waves. He poured himself a cup of tea and leaned against the counter. "People lose things. That's not the same as throwing them away." They stood in silence. Then Elijah asked, "Do you want to rest?" "There's a guest room upstairs. Clean sheets, door locks from the inside." Mariah blinked. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything. She nodded. Her legs felt hollow. He led her upstairs. The hall was narrow, the carpet old but soft. One of the doors had no markings, no name, no decoration. He opened it slowly. A twin bed with a wool blanket, a chair by the window, a small dresser. This was my aunt's room, he said. Where is she now? Gone. 10 years. You never changed the room. Didn't feel right to. She stepped in shoes, squeaking against the floor. You can sleep here. I'll leave the baby monitor in case you need something. The kitchen's yours. So's the laundry. She stood there, unsure. I can leave in the morning, she said. Or not. He paused. If you want work, I can find something. Something steady. Her voice caught again. I haven't worked in months. I've been just surviving. That counts too. He left the door open behind him. Mariah laid her son down and curled beside him, not under the blanket, but just close enough to feel its warmth. Her eyes fluttered shut before her head even met the pillow. Downstairs, Elijah sat alone on the piano bench. He lifted the lid but didn't play. Dust had begun to settle on the keys. He looked at the shelf nearby, where a plaque used to sit with his grandfather's name before the house passed to him. The wood beneath the plaque had faded differently. The outline remained, but the name was gone. He shut the lid and turned off the light. The next morning arrived like a hush, the kind that only snow or healing could bring. Though there was no snow, the house carried the same weight. Quiet, slow, deliberate. Mariah woke before sunrise, not because she had to, but because she couldn't quite believe she had slept at all. Her son was still curled beside her, one hand tucked into the folds of her coat like he'd grown there. The guest room was dim. Pale light came in through a narrow window, filtered by thin beige curtains. Mariah sat up slowly. The mattress hadn't creaked once all night. There was no clock on the dresser, no photos on the wall, just the shape of someone else's past, long vacated and never repurposed. She ran a hand along the dresser's top and felt a fine film of dust. When she opened the top drawer, it groaned slightly, revealing a folded sweater and a mothball. She shut it again, careful not to disturb anything else. Downstairs, the house murmured. Pipes hissed. A door clicked. She stepped into the hallway barefoot, the carpet warm underfoot. The bedroom across from hers was open, unoccupied. The one beside it was shut. In the kitchen, Elijah stood barefoot on the tile, reading a newspaper folded sharply in half. A kettle steamed on the stove. He didn't look up when she entered, just gestured toward the mugs on the counter. Water's hot, coffee's instant, tea's in the drawer. Mariah hesitated. I can make something, she offered. He didn't answer right away. Then, you don't have to. She poured hot water into a mug and stood beside the sink. The silence felt less like an awkward pause and more like a truce. Something you didn't speak over. She finally broke it. Thank you. For the room. For not asking too much. Elijah folded his paper. I have my reasons. She waited for him to explain, but he didn't. Instead, he turned to the fridge. I have a driver headed to the airport. My brother's coming home. Malcolm. 17 years gone. Mariah raised an eyebrow. That's a long time. He liked the sound of distance, Elijah said flatly. Now he says he misses basements and burnt toast. She almost smiled. The front door opened just then, followed by the sound of a suitcase thumping over the threshold. Elijah didn't move. The voice that entered behind the door was rich and familiar, like velvet, worn thin at the edges. I knew you'd still have that creaky radiator. Malcolm walked into the kitchen with the air of someone who'd never truly left. Jeans pressed peacoat, dusted from travel eyes, alert behind rectangular frames. Elijah didn't look up. 3 days late, and still more punctual than your sense of humor. They shook hands. Not a hug, just firm palms and something unsaid. Malcolm noticed Mariah immediately. You must be the reason the guest room door was open. Mariah stood straighter. I'm Mariah, just staying a night. Malcolm smiled, not with pity, but something softer, like curiosity without motive. You eat yet? I was just about to. He reached for the fridge. Good. Then you'll have eggs with us. Elijah still can't make toast without setting off the smoke detector. Elijah muttered something under his breath and walked out of the kitchen. Mariah watched him go, unsure if she'd crossed some invisible line. Malcolm just kept cooking. By the time breakfast was plated, the kitchen smelled like pepper and butter, and the faintest memory of family. They sat. Elijah returned, freshly dressed, holding a phone in one hand. Damien just called, he said to Malcolm. Your driver. He saw her again. Mariah looked up, confused. Saw who Elijah nodded toward her. You. Mariah blinked. Yeah. I was near the fountain. I didn't know if I should come back. I wasn't sure you wanted me to. I did, Elijah said. I didn't know how to find you again. Malcolm raised an eyebrow, looking between them. So Damien saw her, and then, I told him, if she wants to come, bring her. Mariah's voice was barely above a whisper. I did. Malcolm leaned back in his chair. Then you're here for a reason. She looked down at her plate. Her baby made a soft, hiccuping sound from the hallway, where he napped in a makeshift bassinet lined with towels. Elijah folded his napkin and placed it beside the plate. There's work, if you want it. Mariah tilted her head. Doing what? Organizing, paperwork, inventory at the warehouse. It's quiet, no heavy lifting. The hours are yours to set. I've been meaning to create order down there. Never quite had a reason. Malcolm cut in. You mean never quite had a woman willing to fix your filing system? Elijah shrugged. I meant what I said. Mariah's eyes welled for the first time in days. You don't even know if I'm any good. I know you showed up. Malcolm stood, took his plate to the sink and washed it without a word. Then he turned. Elijah doesn't hire easy. That says something. Mariah looked at the two of them. The brothers were nothing alike. One still one, animated. One carrying silence like armor. The other with a passport full of goodbyes. And yet, here she was, in their kitchen, with real food, clean clothes, and the chance to become something more than invisible. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, and the sun touched the windows like it had forgiven them. The warehouse sat on the edge of the city, tucked behind a chain-link fence with a broken padlock and a rusted-out sign that read, Kerr Freight Division. Half the letters had peeled away. The office door was unmarked, just a square of discolored paint where a placard had once hung. Inside it smelled of paper dust, old coffee, and something faintly citrus, like industrial cleaning solution, left too long in a mop bucket. Mariah arrived just after 10. Malcolm had offered to drive her, claiming he wanted to check on an old vending machine he used to joke about owning. Elijah stayed behind. He had a call with some investors about back-end restructuring, a phrase he used like it bored him. She stood at the threshold of the office, baby on her hip, her breath catching at the sheer disarray inside. Filing cabinets with drawers pulled out, and hanging plastic bins stacked without labels, papers yellowing under the hum of flickering fluorescents. A calendar from 2018 still clung to the wall. Malcolm stepped in behind her and whistled. Elijah's been saying he'd clean this up since Mum was still alive. Mariah nodded slowly. I can work with this. You sure? She looked around. I've lived in worse places. He didn't argue. They set up a small folding table for her to work at. Malcolm rolled in a heater from the back. The baby slept in a playpen they'd borrowed from a neighbor and placed in the corner under the only working ceiling light. Mariah tied back her hair, pulled on gloves, and started with the top left drawer. It was full of purchase orders from 10 years ago. No order. No system. Some signed, some missing the bottom line. She pulled one page out, noticed the signature line had been printed, but unsigned. There was a name typed in grey T. Alvarez. Nothing else. She flipped through 10 more. No signature, no initials. Did someone used to work here named Alvarez? She asked aloud. Malcolm leaned against the doorframe, sipping something that smelled suspiciously like a spiked latte. Long time ago. Teresa, maybe. Think she got pushed out when Kerr bought up the building next door. Mariah stared at the unsigned sheets. There's no mention of her past 2017, just these ghosts. Malcolm nodded, suddenly serious. That's how it goes. People disappear from paperwork long before they disappear from buildings. She kept working. Over the next week, Mariah came in each day, sorting boxes by month, then by vendor, then by relevance. She found contracts with incomplete pages, client forms with white-out corrections, a post-it note with someone's social security number scrawled next to a code word, Night Shift Jane. There was a rhythm to it, a strange, satisfying kind of clarity, like unbraiding someone else's chaos into lines she could follow. Every evening she'd return to the house. The guest room had begun to smell like her. Baby powder, lavender oil, the faint warmth of reheated tea. Elijah never hovered. Malcolm did. One night, as she wiped down the counters after dinner, Malcolm handed her an envelope. This is for you. She frowned. I haven't done anything yet. You've done plenty, and it's not just pay. Elijah had me draft up something else. She opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a simple lease. 1 page. No jargon. No deposit. Just a short sentence. Mariah Thomas will take full residency of Unit 3A, located at 1818 Halsted Street, effective immediately. What is this? One of the old rental properties. Been sitting empty. Elijah never sold it. Said it reminded him of someone. Probably our aunt. It's fully furnished. Nothing fancy, but it's yours. Mariah stared at him. I can't afford rent. There is no rent, just utilities. And a key. He pulled the small silver key from his coat pocket and set it gently on the counter. Her breath caught. Why, Malcolm shrugged. You showed up. You did the work. And frankly, we've got too many people in this world who inherit everything and still do nothing. She swallowed hard. I don't know how to thank you. Then don't. Just live like you earned it. Because you did. That night she packed the baby's things in quiet awe. Elijah helped load the boxes. When they arrived at 1818, Halsted, the apartment door opened into a space with dusty light, a working heater, and a couch that still held the imprint of its last tenant. No name on the door, no label on the mailbox, just a new key and an empty shelf waiting to be filled. Mariah ran her hand over the kitchen counter and exhaled. It smells like soap. Malcolm grinned. Better than bleach. She laughed for the first time in weeks. He handed her one last thing, a sealed envelope with her name handwritten on the front. What's this? Elijah said to give it to you when you were inside. She opened it carefully. Inside $300 in cash and a sticky note. You don't owe anyone the story behind your strength, but you should never forget it either. She sat on the couch, her son tucked against her chest, and let the silence wrap around them like clean sheets. This wasn't a rescue. It was a return to a life with walls, with heat, with a door that closed from the inside, to the dignity of choosing what comes next. The apartment smelled of lemon floor cleaner and old wood and that strange kind of calm that settles in a space after years of silence. Mariah spent the first morning wiping down baseboards and folding baby clothes, moving slowly like she didn't want to wake something fragile in the air. Room by room, she began to settle. The bedroom had a narrow window with a crooked blind that rattled when the wind pressed against the pane. The kitchen had a drawer full of mismatched cutlery and a chipped blue plate with a faded daisy in the center. It became her favorite. There were no photos on the walls, no mail with her name yet, no welcome mat outside the door. But the silence was different now. It didn't feel like erasure. It felt like room. Every weekday morning, she'd walk with her son to the warehouse. The stroller creaked and tilted slightly, left a hand-me-down from Malcolm's friend's cousin, one of those long-distance favors that arrived without strings. She'd clock and sort through the chaos and build order, where before there was only dust. By the end of the second week, she had digitized 3 entire filing cabinets, color-coded the client logs, and flagged over a dozen contracts that were missing signatures or had never been properly closed. One in particular caught her eye, a vendor contract from 2019 that referenced a construction partner named Willard Brooks. The logo on the scan was faded, but something about the name sounded familiar. She flipped through the pages. Page 5 was blank, the signature page. The lines for approving executive and partner representative were both untouched. Mariah brought it to Elijah that evening after returning to the main house for dinner. This one was never signed, and you paid the invoice. He looked at the document, blinked. That was a $40,000 job. And there's no closing record. He whistled under his breath. I guess we should have hired you a lot sooner. She smiled, not out of pride, but relief. The kind of smile you wear when someone finally sees you do something right without needing a second take. Malcolm joined them halfway through dinner, slapping down a paper bag on the counter. You like honey cornbread. I haven't had it in years, Mariah said. That's a yes. He pulled out 2 loaves and set them beside the sink. The kitchen grew warmer, and for a while the 3 of them sat like a family that didn't know how to name itself. After the baby fell asleep in the guest cradle, Mariah lingered on the porch. The porch swing creaked beneath her as the sun fell behind the trees. Elijah joined her a moment later. There's a light in you, he said quietly, even if you never saw it before. She looked at him skeptical. A lot of people say that after seeing someone in crisis. It makes them feel noble. I'm not noble, Elijah said, just tired of pretending people have to earn decency. They sat in silence. Do you miss her? She asked. He turned his head slightly. Who? The aunt. The one whose room I stayed in. Elijah nodded slowly. She raised us. After our mother passed. Never had much, but she had a way of making every space feel like it was holding its breath for something better. Mariah looked down at her hands. This place. It feels like that. It's yours now. She didn't answer right away. The cicadas began to hum in the trees. Do you know what it's like to walk past a dozen doors every night and know not a single one has your name? I do. Then thank you for giving me one, even if it doesn't say so outside. He smiled. Name plates are overrated. The next day at the warehouse, she found a locked drawer behind a dusty cabinet. When she jimmied it open with a hairpin, she discovered a manila envelope with no label. Inside were 20 black and white photos of old trucks, a retirement party flyer from 2003, and a faded employee badge clipped to a string. The badge read, C. Dillard, Logistics Coordinator. She'd never seen his name on a single document. No logs, no emails, no system login. Just this one photo. C. Dillard standing in front of a truck, grinning, arms crossed. Someone had erased him long before the badge had been buried. She brought the envelope to Elijah that evening. He flipped through the contents slowly, his jaw tightening. Charles. I was 16 when he retired. Used to whistle while he filed invoices. Said the filing room was his kingdom. He was gone by the time we upgraded the software. We digitized everything and just started fresh. Mariah looked at him. But he was part of this place. He was, and we forgot. He closed the envelope and set it gently on the table. We should frame the photo. Mariah nodded. Maybe put it in the hallway, above the intake desk. Elijah looked at her, something shifting in his eyes. That hallway's never had anything on the walls. Maybe it's time. That night she returned to the apartment and stared at her own blank wall above the couch. She didn't have a photo yet, but for the first time she imagined one hanging there, not to prove she'd been saved, but to prove she'd lived. The call came on a Tuesday. Mariah had just finished logging shipment records from 3 years ago, finally creating digital tags for dozens of forgotten vendor folders. Her son was napping in the playpen, his arms flung wide like a starfish blanket kicked to the corner. The warehouse hummed with the quiet dignity of a place finally being remembered. Her phone, an old flip model Elijah had given her just to make it easier, buzzed against the desk. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Hello? A pause. Then, is this Mariah Thomas? Her voice tightened. Yes. I hope this isn't a shock. My name is Evelyn McDowell. I'm calling from Louisville. I think I may have known your fiancé. Caleb. Mariah sat up slowly, the chair creaking. Caleb who? Caleb Miles. I'm his cousin. We weren't close, not for years, but I was going through his belongings last month. There was a box from before the flood. His phone was water damaged, but I paid to have it recovered. There were messages. From you. Mariah gripped the edge of the desk. He left. 2 years ago. No goodbye. Just vanished. Evelyn's voice faltered. He didn't vanish. Caleb drove down to Owensboro that night to meet our aunt. There was a storm, massive flash floods. He went off the road near the highway split. It took them 8 hours to find him. Mariah's heart slowed, then raced. He was in a coma, Evelyn continued. For months. They thought he might wake up, but he never did. He passed 6 weeks later. We didn't even know about you or the baby. He never said. Mariah couldn't breathe. I thought he ran. I thought I wasn't enough. No, he was coming back to you. I found an envelope in his bag. It was never mailed, but it had your name on it. Evelyn paused, then asked, Can I send it to you? Mariah whispered. Please. She gave the apartment address and hung up. Her hands trembled for the rest of the day. That evening she sat on the porch of 1818 Halstead, her son asleep inside. The stars were weak, dimmed by city light. She pressed her palms together and remembered the night she'd sworn she'd never let another man hurt her again. But Caleb hadn't hurt her. He hadn't abandoned her. He'd tried to come home, and the world, so practiced in taking, had taken again. 2 days later, the letter arrived. A simple white envelope, water-stained at the corners but still sealed. No return address, just her name written in Caleb's tight-looping script. She opened it slowly. Inside a short note, blue ink smudged at the bottom. Mariah, I'm sorry for the delay. I went down to Kentucky to get things in order for us. I finally got the deposit. I'm mailing you a check with this and a promise. We'll get the place on Drexel. You'll be able to rest soon. I love you." Caleb tucked behind it was a cashier's check for $6,500. She stared at it for a long time. The date was 2 years ago. The ink was intact, but the signature line was blank. No endorsement, no signature, no way to cash it. She brought it to Elijah's office that afternoon. He read the note first, then examined the check. "It's real," he said, "but without a signature, the bank will freeze it. Can anything be done? If we can verify the estate, and you're listed as a dependent or next of kin, maybe. It'll take time, but I can help." Mariah looked down at the letter again. "I just needed to know that I wasn't crazy, that he didn't leave me. He didn't." She folded the letter carefully and slipped it back into its envelope. "I want to frame it, not the check. The letter. Where?" She smiled faintly. "Above the couch, right where the wall's still clean." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Elijah added, "That check, even if it never clears, it means something. I know." "What?" "That someone planned for me. That I was part of a future in someone's head, even if I didn't get to live it." That night she placed the envelope on the shelf above the couch. She didn't put it in a frame yet. Just stood it there, leaning upright against the wall like a reminder of what almost was, and what still could be. The bank manager's office smelled faintly of citrus wipes and nervous ambition. It had the forced charm of a place trying to look secure. Mahogany desk, brass lamp, fake plant in the corner. But the walls were bare. One spot behind the manager's chair showed the shadow of a missing plaque. The outline was rectangular, faded just enough to reveal that something important used to hang there. Mariah sat with her hands folded in her lap, the cashier's check placed neatly on the edge of the desk. Elijah sat beside her, quietly dressed, not like a man of means, but like someone who had things to do after this that didn't involve being noticed. The manager, a man in his early 40s with thinning hair and sleeves, rolled one button too high, turned the check over carefully. The document itself is valid, but it's never been endorsed. That makes it unredeemable under normal circumstances. Mariah nodded. "I understand. But the writer of the check passed away. He was my fiancé. He left this for me." "Do you have proof of that relationship?" Elijah placed a slim file folder on the desk. "Affidavit. Affidavit of support. Lease application from 2 years ago with both names. Prenatal appointment receipts showing his name listed as emergency contact. Text message log recovered by the decedent's cousin. Letter enclosed." The manager raised an eyebrow. "You did your homework." "We're not asking for special treatment," Elijah said. "Just a path forward." The manager sighed, leaned back, and ran a finger along the crease of the check. "Estate accounts are tricky. If there was no will, no probate, and the funds are now frozen, we might be able to file a recovery claim under hardship exemption. It'll need board review. That could take months." Mariah spoke for the first time since they sat down. "I don't need the money." "Not really." The manager looked up. "I just want it. Acknowledged. He meant to send it. He did everything right. It got lost in the system." A long silence passed. The manager tapped his pen. "I'll escalate the request, and I'll ask legal to take another look. There's no guarantee, but maybe there should be." After they left the office, Elijah walked her to the car. The sky was overcast again. Low clouds stretched thin like worn linen. The wind carried a damp chill, but Mariah's coat held firm. "I should have been more careful with him," she said. "Back then, I assumed too much. You were surviving. I was too proud to call his cousin when he went quiet, too scared to show up at his old job. Elijah stopped at the door. You lost someone? That doesn't mean you lost your right to need them. Mariah looked down at the sidewalk. Is it strange? I feel more peace now than I have in 2 years. Grief has layers. Peace is just one of them. She exhaled slowly. I want to open something. Elijah tilted his head. What kind of something? A thrift store. Not big, just a small shop. For mothers like me. Second-hand clothes, formula at cost, diapers donated in bulk. A quiet place where no one asks how long you've been out there, or why your name isn't on anything. He didn't smile, but something in his posture eased. I'll help you lease the space. Not lease. Own. He nodded. Then let's find something you can own. 3 weeks later, Malcolm found a former nail salon, just off Trumbull and Cass. The sign had been taken down years ago, leaving behind a sun-bleached outline that still read Crystal's Touch. The storefront windows were dusty, but intact. The key was taped to the back of the breaker box. Mariah stepped inside and immediately saw the bones. It would take work, racks, shelving, permits, but the space held light. Possibility. She imagined the logo above the window. No title, just a line, drawing of a woman holding a child beneath a small roof. No name, just a symbol. She turned to Elijah, who stood in the doorway holding her son. I want this. Then it's yours. Malcolm began renovations the next day. By week 2, the shelves were up. A donation drive brought in boxes of children's clothes, nursing supplies, unopened formula. A muralist volunteered to paint the back wall with soft blues and yellows. Evelyn mailed more of Caleb's old things. Photos, a leather wallet, and a framed picture of him holding a wrench, grinning. Mariah hung the photo in the stockroom behind the door. Not for customers, just for her. On opening day, a woman came in with a toddler in a torn snowsuit. Mariah offered her a fresh coat, warm juice, and a quiet corner to sit. The woman looked around and whispered, "No one's ever let me just sit before." Mariah smiled. That's the whole point. Later that night, Elijah and Malcolm stopped by. The shelves were half empty already. A good sign. Elijah handed her an envelope. Inside, a notarized document. Title transfer, 1818. Halstead Street. Mariah blinked. I don't understand. The apartment, it's yours. No rent, no paperwork due next year. Just your name on the deed. She looked at the paper again, at the line where her name had been typed. Just below it, the owner's signature. Elijah Kerr. You didn't have to. No, he said. But someone should have a long time ago. Mariah folded the document carefully and held it to her chest. Outside, the wind pressed softly against the windows, like it was trying to find its way home. 3 months later, the thrift store on Trumbull became a landmark, not because of signs or ads or social media campaigns, but because word traveled the old way, quietly, from one tired mother to another, from a neighbor to a brother's friend. A place where no one asked for your story before handing you a coat. Mariah named it Shelter's End, not because it was the end of struggle, but because it was the first place after the storm where someone could breathe. The window had no printed hours, just hand-painted script that read, "If you're cold, knock. If you're hungry, come in." On a late afternoon in May, Elijah and Malcolm stopped by. The store was warm with the smell of donated candles and coffee from a nearby church that had started sending thermoses over once a week. Mariah stood behind the counter, tallying new items with a small notebook. Her son, now walking unsteadily, toddled around in mismatched socks. Malcolm leaned on the doorframe, holding a box of gently used books. "You ever gonna hang a sign outside? I've got one inside," Mariah said. She pointed behind the counter. A wooden plaque leaned on the wall, carved by hand, lightly sanded. It read, "Founded by Maria Thomas," in honor of all the names they erased. Elijah stepped closer. "Want help mounting it?" Maria touched the edge of the plaque, then smiled. "Not yet. Let it sit a while. I like the way it leans." He looked around. "Place is different." Maria nodded. "It remembers people now." She walked them out, her hand, brushing her son's curls as they passed under the frame. As the bell above the door jingled, Elijah paused. "You're strong," he said softly. Maria didn't flinch this time. "I know." The light in Detroit softened by late spring, casting long streaks across cracked sidewalks and boarded windows. The city hadn't changed, but for once it didn't feel like the world was tilted against her. Inside the thrift store, the back wall still smelled faintly of paint. The mural showed a pair of hands, not gripping, not pulling, just holding. Underneath, in tiny lettering, the artist had written, "No one disappears. They're just waiting to be remembered." Maria stood beneath it each evening, after closing, sweeping the floors and humming whatever lullaby her son had clung to that week. The envelope from Caleb stayed in her apartment, tucked into a small wooden box beside the lease and the framed title deed. She never opened it again. She didn't need to. Sometimes customers would ask who started the store. She'd smile, point to the plaque, and let them read it for themselves. No press came, no ribbon cutting. No one made a podcast about her story. But one night, a girl came in, barefoot, shivering, holding her younger brother by the wrist. Maria gave them juice, found clean socks, quietly placed a pair of size 5 sneakers by the door. The girl looked up and asked, almost shy, "Does this place have a name?" Maria looked at the space around her, at the worn shelves, the faded couch near the back, the warmth not from heaters but from hands. Then she smiled gently. "Not one you'll find outside. But if you listen, it answers back." The girl nodded. And for a moment, the silence wasn't heavy anymore. Maybe tonight the silence isn't empty. Maybe it's just waiting for someone to call its name. If this story moved you, let us know in the comments. Your thoughts matter. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a tale of quiet strength and second chances. Every share helps bring these stories to someone who needs them,